Despite its name, Fang was an ordinary small town in a northern province of Chiang Mai, situated on the banks of a river. It made a convenient stopover for river traders and passengers throughout most of the year. A few barges, rafts, and sometimes even a large sailboat could usually be found moored at Fang. But all that was long ago, before the creation of the Trial of Champions. Now, once a year, the river is crammed with boats as people arrive from hundreds of miles around, hoping to witness the breaking of an ancient tradition and see a victor in the Trial of Champions. On the 1st of May each year, warriors and heroes come to Fang to face the test of their lives. Survival is unlikely, yet many take the risk, for the prize is great. A purse of 10,000 gold pieces and the freedom of Chiang Mai forever. But to become champion is no easy task. Some years ago, a powerful baron of Fang called Sukhumvit decided to bring attention to his town by creating the ultimate contest. With the help of the townspeople, he constructed a labyrinth deep in the hillside behind Fang, from which there was only one exit. The labyrinth was filled with all kinds of deadly tricks and traps and loathsome monsters. Sukhumvit had designed it in meticulous detail, so that anybody hoping to face its challenge would have to use their wits as well as weapon skill. When he was finally satisfied that all was complete, he put his labyrinth to the test. He picked 10 of his finest guards, and fully armed, they marched into the labyrinth. They were never seen again. The tale of the ill-fated guards soon spread throughout the land, and it was then that Sukhumvit announced the first Trial of Champions. Messengers and news sheets carried his challenge, 10,000 gold pieces and freedom of Chiang Mai forever to any person surviving the perils of the labyrinth of Fang. The first year, 17 brave warriors attempted the walk, as it later became known. Not one reappeared. As the years passed and the Trial of Champions continued, it attracted more and more challengers and spectators. Fang prospered and would prepare itself months in advance for the spectacle it hosted each May. The town would be decorated, tents erected, dining halls built, musicians, dancers, fire eaters, illusionists, and every sort of entertainer hired, and entries registered from hopeful individuals intent on making the walk. The last week of April found the people of Fang and its visitors in wild celebration. Everybody sang, danced, and laughed until the day broke on the 1st of May, when the town thronged to the gates of the labyrinth to watch the first challenger of the year step forward to face the Trial of Champions. Having seen one of Sukhumvit's challenges nailed to a tree, you decide that this year you will attempt the walk. For the last 5 years, you have been attracted to it not for the rewards, but for the simple fact that nobody has ever yet emerged victorious from the labyrinth. You intend to make this the year in which a champion is crowned. Gathering up a few belongings, you set off immediately. 2 days' walk takes you west to the coast, where you enter the cursed port, Black Sand. Wasting no time in that city of thieves, you buy your passage on a small boat sailing north to where the river Coke meets the sea, and from there you raft upriver for 4 days, until finally you arrive in Fang. The trial begins in 3 days' time, and the town is in an almost hysterical mood of excitement. You register your entry with the officials and are given a violet scarf to tie around your arm, informing everyone of your status. For 3 days, you enjoy Fang's greatest hospitality. and are treated like a demigod. During the long merriment, you almost forget your purpose in Fang, but the evening before the trial, the magnitude of the task ahead begins to dominate your thoughts. Later, you are taken to a special guest house and are shown your room. There is a splendid 4-poster bed with satin sheets to help you rest, but there is little time left for sleep. Just before dawn, a trumpet call awakens you from vivid dreams of flaming pits and giant black spiders. Minutes later, there is a knock on your door, and a man's voice rings out saying, "Your challenge begins soon. Please be ready to leave in 10 minutes. You climb out of bed, walk over to the window and open the shutters. Already people are thronging the streets, moving quietly through the morning mist. Spectators, no doubt on their way to the Labyrinthe, hoping to find good vantage points from which to watch the competitors. Walking over to a wooden table on which your trusty sword and shield lie, you pick them up and cut the air with a mighty sweep, wondering which beasts your sword's sharp edge may soon have to meet. You open the door into the corridor, and a small man greets you with a low bow as you emerge from your bedroom. "Please follow me," he says. He turns to his left and walks quickly towards the stairs at the end of the corridor. Walking through a parting in the crowds, you see Baron Succumbit himself, standing by the entrance waiting to greet the contender in the trial of champions. You count 5 others standing proudly in line, their violet scarves displayed for all to see. There are 2 bare-chested barbarians dressed in furs. They stand completely motionless, legs straight and slightly apart, arms thrust forward to rest on the hilts of their long, double-headed battle axes. A sleek elven woman with golden hair and feline green eyes is adjusting the crossbelt of daggers wrapped around her leather tunic. Of the 2 remaining men, one is covered from head to foot in iron plate armor, with a plumed helmet and a crested shield. The other is cloaked in black robes, only his dark eyes showing between the swarms of his black-faced scars. Long knives, a wire garrote, and other silent death weapons hang from his belt. The 5 contenders acknowledge your arrival with almost imperceptible nods of the head, and you turn to face the exultant crowd for the last time. Suddenly, a hush falls over the crowd as Baron Succumbit steps forward, holding 6 bamboo sticks. You draw one from his outstretched hand, and you read the word, 5th. Then the trial begins. The knight is first. He salutes the crowd before disappearing into the tunnel, and is followed half an hour later by the elf. Next goes a barbarian, and then the dark assassin. Next, it's your turn. But before embarking on your adventure, we must first determine your own strengths and weaknesses. You have in your possession a sword, a shield, and a backpack for carrying provisions for the trip. You have been preparing for your quest by training yourself in swordplay and exercising vigorously. To see how effective your preparations have been, dice will be rolled to determine your skill, stamina, and luck scores. Or, if you wish to begin your adventure immediately, you can choose between 3 ready-made adventurers. First, we'll roll for your initial level of skill. This reflects your sword skill and fighting expertise, and will be determined by rolling 1 die and adding 6. Next, we'll roll for your initial stamina, which represents your strength. So the higher your stamina score, the longer you will survive. This will be determined by rolling 2 dice and adding 12. Next, we'll roll for your initial luck, which represents how lucky an adventurer you are. Luck and magic are facts of life in the fantasy world you're about to explore. This is determined by rolling 1 die and adding 6. You may also take a magical potion with you to aid you on your quest. Each bottle of potion contains 2 measures, so can be used twice during an adventure. You can choose from a potion of skill that restores your skill points to their initial amount, a potion of strength that restores your stamina points to their initial amount, or a potion of fortune that not only restores your luck points to their initial amount, but will also increase your initial luck score by 1 each time it's used. Lastly, before you begin your quest, you are given enough provisions for 10 meals. When you eat a meal, your stamina score will increase by 4 points. But don't forget, your stamina can never exceed the initial amounts you've just set. You have a long way to go, so use your provisions wisely. During your adventure, you'll enter into combat a number of times, and the further you go, the tougher your opponents will be. Combat takes place over several rounds, and your attack strength is based on yours and your enemy's skill scores. For each round of battle, we'll roll 2 dice for you and 2 for your opponent, adding the results to your skill scores. These are your respective attack strengths. Whoever's attack strength is the highest wins that round of combat. If you both have the same attack strength in a round, then it will be a tie. In some battles, you can take an opportunity to escape. But beware. If you do run away, your opponent will automatically score 1 hit on you as you flee, costing you 2 stamina points. So be sure you have enough. Such is the price of cowardice. You are playing using the new battle system, where the battle takes place over 3 rounds. Your sheer battle-hardened nature will mean you'll always win the battle after the 3 rounds, but every round you lose will cost you 2 stamina points. So be careful. Losing all your stamina will still be fatal. At the start of each round, you'll have a short time to decide to fight, or to build up your stamina by eating your provisions or taking a potion, if you have one. Now it is your turn to salute the crowd. Holding your violet scarf aloft, you take one final deep breath of cool, fresh air before turning to pass between the stone-pillared gateway into circumvent's corridors of power to face unknown perils on the walk through the mighty barrens, Deathtrap Dungeon. The clamour of the excited spectators gradually fades behind you as you venture deep into the gloom of the cavern. Large crystals hang from the tunnel roof at 20-metre intervals, radiating just enough soft light for you to see your way. As your eyes gradually become accustomed to the near darkness, you begin to see movement all around. Spiders and beetles crawling up and down the chiselled walls disappear quickly into cracks and crevices as they sense your approach. Rats and mice scurry along the floor ahead of you. Droplets of water drip into small pools with an eerie plopping sound which echoes down the tunnel. The air is cold, moist, and dank. After walking slowly along the tunnel for about 5 minutes, you arrive at a stone table standing against the wall to your left. On it, there are 6 boxes, one of which has your name painted on its lid. The lid of the box lifts off easily, and inside you find 2 gold pieces and a note written on a small piece of parchment addressed to you. After placing the gold in your pocket, you read the message, which says, "Well done. At least you had the sense to stop and take advantage of the token aid given to you. Now I can advise you that you will need to find and use several items if you hope to pass triumphantly through my Deathtrap Dungeon. Signed, Succumbit." Memorizing the advice on the note, you tear it into tiny pieces and continue north along the tunnel, where you come to a junction. A white arrow painted on one wall points west. On the floor, you can see wet footprints made by those who entered before you. It's hard to be sure, but it looks as though 3 of them followed the direction of the arrow, while one decided to go east. Following the 3 sets of wet footprints along the west passage of the tunnel, you soon arrive at a junction. Ahead, you hear the thud of heavy footsteps approaching. Out of the gloom steps a large, primitive caveman, dressed in animal hide and carrying a stone club. On seeing you, he grunts and spits on the floor, then raises his club and lumbers on towards you, looking anything but friendly.
Your enemy is strong, but slow, and screams in pain as your sword sinks into his leg. You dodge to the side as the caveman swings his club at you and kick out, knocking him to the floor. Readying yourself for another attack, you fail to see the rock flying towards you. Your stamina is reduced as it lands hard in your stomach.
Pleased with your victory,
You notice that the dead caveman is wearing a leather wristband with 4 small rat skulls hanging from it. After a few more steps, you see a backpack propped up against the tunnel wall. You wonder if it belongs to one of your rivals. There is a single gold piece lying in the bottom of the backpack. As you reach for it, you suddenly feel a light tickling movement on the back of your hand. You withdraw your hand slowly, trying to control your mountain panic, and are horrified to see a black widow spider. Before you can shake it off, it sinks its venomous fangs deep into your wrist, costing you a huge 6 stamina points. Only your incredible strength could allow you to withstand the powerful venom. But you are weakened, and also lose 1 skill point. Your hand trembles as you pocket the gold piece, cursing the person who dropped the backpack as you set off north again. You arrive at a junction in the tunnel. A new branch leads west, but the wet footprints you have been following continue north. You decide to keep following the footprints. You soon come to another junction in the tunnel. One branch leads east, but the wet footprints you have been following continue north, and you decide to follow their trail. The passage opens out into a wide cavern which is darker but much drier. Ahead, you see the footprints gradually fade, then disappear. There is a large idol in the center of the cavern that must be 6 meters high. In its head are jeweled eyes, each as big as your fist. On either side of the idol stand 2 giant stuffed, bird-like creatures. Not much farther down the tunnel, you come to a closed door on your left. Putting your ear to the door, you listen intently but hear nothing. You enter a room which is small and completely empty. As soon as you are inside, the door slams shut behind you. Suddenly a voice booms out of nowhere, shouting, "Welcome to Deathtrap Dungeon, the ingenious killer labyrinth of my master. Adventurer, I trust you will pay your respects to my master by shouting out his name." You take a deep breath and shout, "Hail Circumvit!" Once again, the mysterious voice calls out, only this time its tone is full of contempt and derision. "So, we have a sniveling weed in our midst, do we?" sneers the voice. "My master has a special gift for you, loathsome creep." Suddenly, water starts pouring into the room through a hole in the ceiling. It soon rises above your ankles, and there is no apparent way of escape. You wade back to the door. It is firmly locked, but in desperation you try ramming it with your shoulder. We'll see how skillful you really are. Remember, a roll equal to or less than your skill score means you have been skillful, but a roll higher than your skill could end badly. You are not strong enough to force open the heavy door. The water is now waist high and you are exhausted from your efforts. The water level rises quickly and you find yourself floating ever upwards until your face is pressed against the ceiling. You are soon completely immersed and unable to hold your breath any longer. Your adventure ends here. Following the 3 sets of wet footprints along the west passage of the tunnel, you soon arrive at a junction. Walking along the tunnel, you are surprised to see a large iron bell hanging down from the ceiling. The tunnel veers sharply to the right and continues north for as far as you can see. You hear a tremendous commotion in the distance, growling and snarling and howling. You draw your sword and set off in the direction of the noise. Ahead, in the dim light, you see 2 hobgoblins fighting, punching, and kicking each other furiously. Next to where the hobgoblins are fighting, there is a leather bag lying on the floor, and it seems to be this that they are fighting over. You creep up behind the fighting hobgoblins, and leaping out of the shadows, you push them into the wall as you run by. Looking back, you see them sprawled on the floor and chuckle to yourself as you hurry on north. The tunnel soon takes another sharp right turn. Following it east, you arrive at a strange obstruction, a row of 12 wooden poles across the tunnel. They are fixed to the walls at each end, about half a meter off the floor and spaced about a meter apart. You step confidently onto the first pole and stride across to the next. As you land on the third pole, it immediately releases a shower of sharp splinters, each several centimeters long, and losing you 2 luck points. They fly out in all directions at great speed, and you can't avoid being hit. We'll roll 2 dice for the number of splinters that sink into your flesh. Each one that hits you will cost you 1 stamina point. You manage to scramble over the remaining poles and sit down to the painful task of removing the splinters from your body. After resting for a while, you set off east again. The tunnel ends at a junction. The footprints you have been following turn north, and you decide to stay with them. You soon come to another junction in the tunnel. One branch leads east, but the wet footprints you have been following continue north, and you decide to follow their trail. The passage opens out into a wide cabin which is darker but much drier. Ahead, you see the footprints gradually fade, then disappear. There is a large idol in the center of the cabin that must be 6 meters high. In its head are jeweled eyes, each as big as your fist. On either side of the idol stand 2 giant stuffed, bird-like creatures. Not much farther down the tunnel, you come to a closed door on your left. Putting your ear to the door, you listen intently but hear nothing. The tunnel twists and turns, but keeps steadily north. Ahead, you see a thin shaft of blue light streaming down from the ceiling to the floor. It sparkles and shimmers, and you can see images of laughing faces in the light. You come to an arched doorway set in the right-hand wall of the tunnel. The heavy stone door is closed, but there is an iron latch and a round handle. Lifting the latch and pushing the heavy stone door open, you find yourself in a large cabin. The light is dim and murky, but as your eyes begin to adjust, you see that the walls are covered in green algae and running with moisture. The floor is strewn with straw. The atmosphere is warm, damp, and fetid, and a soft humming sound fills the air. You step gingerly through the straw towards a corner of the cabin where there appears to be a shallow pit. Peering warily into the pit, you are disgusted to see a mass of pale, writhing worms, some as much as 1/2 meter long. Nauseated, you are about to turn away when you notice that their undulating bodies are swarming around a dagger, its point held fast in a crack in the pit floor. The hilt is cased in black leather, studded with opals, and the blade is fashioned from a strange, reddish-black burnished metal you have never seen before. You long to touch the dagger, but this would mean plunging your hand in among the writhing worms. Taking a deep breath, you lean over the pit and plunge your forearm into the mass of wriggling worms. They are cold and clammy and feel extremely nasty, but at least they are harmless, and you are able to seize the dagger by the hilt. You give it a hard tug and it comes away from the crack in which the tip was embedded. Admiring its beauty, and wondering whether it might once have belonged to some luckless contestant, you put the opal-studded dagger firmly in your belt and leave the cabin. As you make your way back to the doorway, the buzzing sound increases in intensity, and you look around desperately to discover where it's coming from. Glancing up in the nick of time, you see a huge and grotesque black shape of a giant fly emerging from a recess high up in the cavern wall. As it gets closer, you realize that it's at least 1.5 meters long. Its opaque wings vibrate, making the sickening buzzing noise you can hear, and its 6 black, hairy legs are poised to grasp your body. Below, Its multifaceted eyes is a long, shiny black proboscis, which darts in and out venomously. You have stolen the giant fly's treasure from her brood of maggots, and you must face the consequences. It's time to test your luck again. Remember, a roll equal to or less than your luck score means you've been lucky, but a roll higher than your luck could end badly. The giant fly dives down and seizes you with 4 of its legs. It climbs quickly back to the roof of the cavern, and you find yourself dangling helplessly in its grasp. Then, to your horror, it suddenly releases its grip, and you fall 10 meters to the floor, landing heavily. We'll roll 1 die here and deduct the number from your stamina score. The giant fly swoops down again to try to capture you, but this time you manage to evade its outstretched legs. Stepping back, you draw your sword to prepare to fight the hideous insect as it turns to attack you again. The fly charges at you and slams into you like a cannonball, hitting your chest and knocking you flat to the floor. You hurl yourself at your enemy, fist flailing, and land a stunning blow. The creature flies at you so close you can't use your weapons. Grabbing it by its legs, you swing around, slamming it into a wall. Pleased with your victory, you wipe the vile yellow slime from the blade of your sword and walk quickly to the door, back to the tunnel, and head north. The tunnel ends shortly at a junction. Looking left and right, you see a narrow passage disappearing into the dim distance. You walk down the passage and soon find yourself standing at the edge of a deep, dark pit. The passage continues east on the other side of the pit. You think you could probably jump over the pit, but you're not sure. There is a rope hanging down from the ceiling over the center of the pit. Gripping the rope firmly, you step back to take a running jump. However, in the dim light, you do not notice that someone has cut the rope almost in two, just a little way above the section you are holding. As you swing out across the pit, it suddenly breaks, and you scream with fear as you plunge headlong to the depths below. You land heavily on your back, but luckily your backpack cushions your fall, only costing you 1 skill point and 2 stamina points. It could have been much worse. The darkness is almost pitch black at the bottom of the pit, and you crawl along the floor, groping in front of you. Suddenly your hand touches something cold, hard and smooth. The object is small and round, but you cannot figure out what it is. You place it in your backpack, hoping to see what it is once you are out of the pit. You continue to crawl forward and soon reach the pit wall. It's too smooth to climb, and you have to cut hand and toe holds in it with your sword. This takes a long time, but finally you climb out of the pit on the east side. You immediately check out the object in your backpack and discover that you have found an orb of blood-red ruby. You are absolutely delighted and head off east in high spirits, whistling softly. The tunnel makes a sudden left turn and continues north as far as you can see. You soon arrive at a closed wooden door in the left-hand wall. The door opens into a large candlelit room filled with incredibly lifelike statues of knights and warriors. A white-haired old man dressed in tattered rags jumps out from behind one of the statues and starts to giggle. Though he looks like a fool, the sparkle in his eyes makes you think there is more to him. In a high-pitched voice, he says, "Oh, good! Another stone for my garden. I'm glad you have come to join your friends. Now, I'm a fair man, so I'll ask you a question. If you answer correctly, I'll let you go free. But if your answer is wrong, I'll turn you to stone." He starts to chuckle again, obviously pleased with your arrival. The old man points at one of the statues, and you recognize it immediately. It is the knight who started the trial of champions. The agonized look on his face locked in stone for eternity. The old man smiles, saying, "This man weighs 100 pounds plus half his weight. How much does he weigh?" What will you answer? Still smiling, the old man looks at you and says, "Well done, stranger. You have answered correctly. I wish you good fortune during the rest of the trial of champions. And to this end, I shall increase your powers." He then mutters a few more unintelligible words, and you feel a powerful surge soar through your body, increasing your skill, stamina, and luck by 1. You bid the old man farewell and leave his room to continue north along the passage. Only a few meters further down the passage, you see another closed door in the left-hand wall. The letter X is scratched into its center panel. Putting your ear to the door, you listen intently, but can hear nothing. The door opens into a large room. Looking around, you see an alcove in the west wall. In the middle of the room, sitting in the chair, is the skeleton of an armed warrior, possibly a contestant from years gone by. The skeletal fingers of its right hand grip a crumpled parchment. Touching the parchment has precisely the effect you had feared. The skeleton lurches forward, and rising from its chair in a series of jerky movements, raises its sword to strike you. Lunging sideways, you draw your sword to defend yourself. You dodge to the side as the warrior swings its sword. You kick out, knocking its legs out from under it. You run around the jerking skeleton, smashing your sword into its arm. The skeleton is strong, but slow. You swing your sword, which smashes into its leg. Once again, you reach for the parchment, only this time lying amidst a pile of broken bones. Unfolding it, you see a map of a room with a drawing of a hideous creature inside it. Beneath the monster is a rhyme, which reads, "Should you meet the manticore, of its tail beware. Shield yourself against the spikes flying through the air." You fold up the piece of parchment and put it in your backpack, repeating the rhyme over and over to yourself. You walk across to the alcove. At the back of the alcove are some steps leading down into a cellar. Cobwebs brush your face as you descend. The cellar ceiling is quite low, and the floor is strewn with debris. In the middle of the wall opposite you is an archway, which leads into another crystal-lit tunnel. There are large mushrooms growing on the debris to your right. The tunnel continues west for several hundred meters, finally ending at some steps leading up to a closed trap door. You climb the steps slowly, hearing muffled voices above you. In the dim light, you can see that the trap door is not locked. You hear footsteps and suddenly the trapdoor is thrown back. For a few seconds you are completely blinded by the bright light from the room above and do not see the goblin thrust in his spear downwards or hear his sadistic laughter as the point pierces your neck. Your adventure ends here. The tunnel continues west for several hundred meters, finally ending at some steps leading up to a closed trap door. You climb the steps slowly, hearing muffled voices above you. In the dim light, you can see that the trap door is not locked. You throw the trap door open and run up the steps into a bright, lantern-lit room. Two goblins are sharpening their short swords on a stone set in the middle of the floor. You catch them momentarily off guard, but they quickly recover and both rush forward to attack you. A point of note here, adventurer. Because of the shape of the room, both goblins will have a separate attack on you in each attack round. However, here your attack will only be effective on one of the goblins. Against the other, you must still use your attack strength in a normal way. But even if your attack would have been effective, you will not wound it. It will just count this as though you have defended yourself. However, if its attack strength is greater, it will have wounded you in the normal way. You thrust your sword, and you clearly damage the creature. You both swing for each other, and in the confusion, both miss.
Your enemy is strong, but slow, and screams in pain as your sword sinks into his leg. You lunge at the creature's stomach with your sword drawn, but the creature whips around, parrying your blow. Neither of you are harmed. You hurl yourself at your enemy, fists flailing, and land a stunning blow. You thrust your sword, and you clearly damage the creature. Your enemy is strong, but slow, and screams in pain as your sword sinks into his leg. You hurl yourself at your enemy, fists flailing, and land a stunning blow.
Triumphant in one of your toughest battles to date, you see that the only furniture in the goblin's room is a table, 2 chairs, and a cupboard on the wall. There are 2 closed doors, one in the west wall and the other in the north wall. The cupboard contains a wooden mallet and 10 iron spikes, which you put in your backpack while wondering which door to open. The door opens into another tunnel, which rises gently into the distance. After walking uphill for a while, the tunnel levels out, and you soon arrive at a door in the right-hand wall, to which a withered hand is nailed. You enter a room in which a man in tattered clothing is standing chained to the wall by his left arm, and you see that his right hand is missing and realize that this must be the one nailed to the door. Pleading for mercy, he cowers back from you as far as his chains will allow. You step up to the frightened man and cleave the chain with your sword. He drops to his knees and bows, thanking you over and over again. He tells you that 4 years ago, he entered the Trial of Champions but failed. He fell down a pit and had to be rescued by a trial master, one of Baron Succumvit's dungeon administrators. He was offered a choice between death or servitude in Deathtrap Dungeon as the trial master's minion. Choosing the latter, he worked like a slave until he could stand it no longer and tried to escape. Alas, he was unsuccessful and was captured by the trial master's wandering orc guards. To teach him a lesson, they cut off his hand and condemned him to a year's imprisonment in this cell. You ask him whether he has any information that might be of use to you. He scratches his head. Well, I haven't exactly done very well in here myself, but I do know that you need to collect gems and precious stones if you hope to get out. I don't know why, but there it is. Without another word, the ragged prisoner dashes out of the room, turning left into the tunnel. You decide to keep heading north and turn right. There is an open pipe in the right-hand wall, about 1 meter in diameter. It is too dark to see far down it. You shout into it and hear your voice echoing down the iron pipe until eventually the sound fades away. The pipe is wet and slimy, but you crawl on into the dank darkness, slithering and sliding as you go. Suddenly your hand touches something hard and square, which feels as if it is made of wood. It rattles as you shake it, and you decide you must be holding a box. Removing the box lid by the light of the tunnel, you find an iron key and a large gem. It is a sapphire. Placing the items carefully in your backpack, you gain 1 luck point and set off north once again. There is a new branch in the tunnel on your left, and ahead you see 2 bodies lying on the floor. You stop and peer down the new tunnel, but seeing no doors or creatures, you decide against walking down it. With your sword drawn, you walk over to the bodies of the 2 orc guards. At least one of your rivals in the trial of champions must still be ahead of you. A quick search of the bodies produces nothing, apart from a necklace of teeth around the neck of one of the orcs. The necklace is an amulet of strength which adds 1 skill point and 1 stamina point. Pleased with your find, you continue your quest north. The tunnel soon ends at a junction. Standing there alone and wondering which way to go is one of your rivals. It is one of the barbarians. You call out to him, but at first he does not answer. He merely stares at you coldly, his hands firmly gripping his axe. You walk up to him and ask which way he is heading. He grunts his reply, saying that he is going west, and you may go with him if you wish. Although you are slightly uneasy in each other's company, knowing that there can only be one winner in the trial of champions, you are both content to share in the benefits of a temporary alliance, and you begin to tell each other of your exploits so far, of the monsters and traps encountered and the dangers overcome. Walking along, you soon come to the edge of a wide pit. It is too deep and dark to see to the bottom. The barbarian suggests he lowers you to the bottom with his rope, saying he has a torch which he can light for you to use. The barbarian reluctantly agrees to your alternative suggestion. You both step back and take running jumps over the pit, landing safely on the other side. Pleased with the ease with which you cleared the obstacle, you continue down the tunnel. The barbarian, now a little reckless, fails to see a raised floor stone, which tilts forward as he stumbles over it, releasing a huge boulder loosely set in the ceiling. The rock crashes down on top of the barbarian, knocking him to the floor, crushing his skull. You must now continue your quest alone. Feeling sorry for the loss of your new companion, you carry on down the tunnel. Suddenly you see daylight. You run towards the most beautiful sight you have seen for a long time and emerge, expecting to see the welcoming sight of cheering people. But there is no hero's welcome from the people all around you. They are dead. You are standing in a cold chamber littered with armored skeletons and bodies. The exit to victory was just an illusion. Only the corpses of the past adventures are real. Utterly dejected, you walk back towards the tunnel, but hit an invisible barrier. You, like the adventurers tricked before you, are trapped in this ghoulish place and destined to end your days in the chamber of the dead. Although you are slightly uneasy in each other's company, knowing that there can only be one winner in the trial of champions, you are both content to share in the benefits of a temporary alliance. And you begin to tell each other of your exploits so far, of the monsters and traps encountered and the dangers overcome. Walking along, you soon come to the edge of a wide pit. It is too deep and dark to see to the bottom. The barbarian suggests he lowers you to the bottom with his rope, saying he has a torch which he can light for you to use. You tie the rope around your waist and take hold of the lighted torch given to you by Throm, as your barbarian ally calls himself. Taking hold of the slack rope, Throm lowers you slowly over the edge of the pit and down into the dark depths below. You can see by the light of the torch that the sides of the pit are extremely smooth. You drop about 20 meters before hitting the bottom of the pit. There, you see another tunnel heading north, and you call up to Throm and tell him of your discovery. He calls back, saying that he is going to tie the rope around a protruding rock on the edge of the pit and will come down and join you. You hear him climbing down, and soon you are together again. Throm retrieves his rope by shaking it off the rock, and you set off north along the new tunnel. On a stone ledge in the tunnel wall, you see two dusty leather-bound books. Throm grunts his contempt for the written word, urging you to leave the books and hurry on. As you open the book, it immediately begins to disintegrate, the pages turning to dust in your hands. You manage to keep a few fragments and read the handwritten script. The book appears to be about monsters, and from what you can make out, it contains a full description of a monster called the Blood Beast. It is a horrific, bloated creature with tough, spiny skin and facial blisters which burst open to become mock eyes, evolved to hide the blood beast's only weak spot, the real eyes. Blood beasts usually dwell in pools of fetid slime which give off a poisonous gas so strong that it alone can easily knock people unconscious. The blood beast, although too bulbous to haul itself out of its slime pool, has a long and vicious tongue which it wraps around its victims before it drags them into its pool. As the helpless and still living victim's flesh decomposes in the vile slime, the blood beast will feed on it. You tell Throm about the grotesque blood beast. He merely shrugs his shoulders and tells you to get going. The book pages are sealed together, but a small hole has been cut out in the middle of them, just large enough to hold a small corked bottle containing a clear liquid. You show it to Throm, who holds up his hand, indicating that he does not want you to come anywhere near him with it. His distrust of things unknown is strongly evident. You rub the liquid into your wounds, but they do not heal. Staring into the empty bottle, you wonder what exactly the liquid was. Setting off, you continue your journey north with Throm. The tunnel turns sharply to the right. Continuing east for as far as you can see. Throm stops and tells you to halt as well. He turns his head slowly from side to side, listening. I hear footsteps coming down the tunnel towards us, he whispers. Draw your sword. You both crouch down to hide in the shadows, and not a minute too soon. For a moment later, you see the silhouette of two armed guards. Throm jumps up and dashes forward, screaming a loud battle cry. They are two cave trolls. Throm attacks the first one with his battle axe, and you run to his aid to attack the second. You drop to the ground, sweeping away the troll's legs. It howls as its head hits the hard ground. The troll takes a swing at your head. Thankfully, you duck just in time. You drop to the ground, grab the creature, and ram its head hard into the wall. You look to the left and see Throm standing over the cave troll he has slain. Blood is pouring out from a deep cut in his shoulder, but it does not seem to worry him. You search the bodies of the cave trolls, but find nothing apart from a bone ring on a leather cord hanging round the neck of one of them. The ring is engraved with a symbol which Throm recognizes. He explains that it must have belonged to druids of the north, and that an ancient talisman such as this will increase your powers if your body is able to accept it. As soon as you put the ring on your finger, your whole body starts to shake. We'll see how skillful you really are. Remember, a roll equal to or less than your skill score means you've been skillful, but a roll higher than your skill could end badly. Your body continues to vibrate intensely, and you feel as if you're about to pass out. But your strength is great, and you manage to withstand the tremendous shock to your system. Finally, you calm down and begin to feel the ring's beneficial powers working on you and adding 3 stamina points. You see Throm looking at you anxiously, so you reassure him that you are fully recovered. He strides off east, and you follow him eagerly. The tunnel leads into a damp cavern. With a high ceiling and rock-strewn floor. Long and wet, teeth-like stalactites hang down threateningly. Their constant dripping creates milky pools on the floor. The tunnel carries on through an archway, carved in the shape of a demonic mouse. You walk around the cavern, but find nothing of interest. Throm calls out behind you, saying that he has found a leather pouch under a pile of rocks. Opening the pouch, he laughs out loud as a tiny mouse runs through his fingers and scurries off into the crevice behind two boulders. Suddenly, you hear the sound of cracking rock above you and look up to see stalactites breaking off from the roof. Throm's booming laugh, which still echoes through the chamber, has made the stalactites vibrate and break off. You yell at Throm to run through the archway as the stalactites start to crash to the floor. This will be a test of your luck. Running towards the archway, you stumble over a rock and lose your footing. You land sprawled on the floor, and before you have time to get up again, a stalactite crashes down on top of you, its pointed tip piercing your leg, costing you 5 stamina points. The stalactites continue to fall all around you, but you haven't enough strength to do more than crawl towards the archway. Suddenly you feel an arm around your waist, picking you up. You realize, in your semi-conscious state, that Throm is carrying you. He lays you down in the safety of the tunnel and tends your wounds. You decide to eat some of your provisions to help regain your strength, and you also give 1 portion to Throm in gratitude for his rescuing you. He apologizes for starting the rockfall and offers you his hand to shake. Despite the pain, you manage to smile and shake his hand. When you have finally recovered, you stand up and head east, with Throm leading the way. The tunnel ends at a large oak door. Throm wastes no time in testing the handle and is somewhat surprised to find the door unlocked. He pushes it open and walks into a torch-lit chamber. Sitting alone on an ornate chair is a dwarf who bids you enter. As you do so, the oak door swings shut behind you. Adventurers, you have done well to get this far, says the dwarf in a deep voice. However, as you both know, there can only be one winner in the Trial of Champions. As Trial Master, it is my duty to Baron Circumvit, to let only the most able continue. Therefore, I must devise a test of wits and strength to eliminate one of you. Please do not attempt to dispose of me. It will be utterly pointless, for, as you can see, there is no obvious way out of this chamber, and only I know where the hidden exit lies. Now, if you would care to decide between you who will go first, I shall make the necessary preparations. You look at Throm, suddenly angry that your effective partnership might come to an end. He leans over and whispers in your ear that you should try to kill the dwarf and worry about the exit later. You tell Throm that there is no point in killing the dwarf, as you will never find your way out of the chamber alone. You argue that an opportunity of tricking the dwarf might arise later, once you have found the exit from the chamber. So you intend to go through with the dwarf's test. You tell the dwarf that you are ready, and he beckons you to follow him, telling Throm to wait for his return. a secret door opens in the chamber wall, and you follow the dwarf into a small circular room. He closes the door behind you and hands you 2 bone dice, telling you to throw them onto the floor. You roll a 6 and a 2, a total of 8. The dwarf asks you to roll them again, but this time you must predict whether the total will be the same, less, or more than the 8. The dwarf looks at the dice.
Not very good at playing the odds, are you?
He sneers.
I regret you must suffer a penalty before you can continue.
From out of his pocket, he produces 2 pills. One is stamped with the letter S, and the other stamped with the letter L. He asks you to choose one and swallow it. The pill makes you feel as though the whole world is against you, reducing your luck points by 2. The dwarf tells you that you can now go on to the second stage of the test. He reaches for a wicker basket which, he informs you, contains a snake. He tips the basket over and the snake drops out onto the floor. It is a cobra, and it rears up in the air ready to strike. The dwarf tells you that he wishes to test your reactions. You must grasp the cobra bare-handed below its head, avoiding its deadly fangs. You crouch down on the floor, tensing yourself for the moment at which to seize it. This will be a tough test of your skill. With lightning speed, you thrust your hand out and grip the cobra just below its open mouth. You lift it up, and with your arm outstretched, you dangle it in front of the dwarf. He doesn't flinch, but says in his calm, expressionless way,
Please put the cobra back in the basket and prepare for the final part of the test. Follow me.
You do what he says and follow him back into the chamber, where Throm is pacing up and down, obviously ill at ease. You wave to him while the dwarf opens a second secret door and tells you to walk on through and wait for him. Again you comply, and you find yourself in another circular room, although this one resembles a small arena. The floor is covered with sand, and a small balcony runs around the arena wall. Opposite the secret entrance you came in through is an ominous-looking wooden door. Suddenly you hear a shout, and you look up to see the smiling dwarf standing on the balcony. He throws 2 pieces of paper down to you. On one of them, the words, "No crop is," are written. On the other, "Ruin moat." In his ever-calm voice, he says,
If you rearrange the letters of the words, you will find the names of 2 creatures. You may choose which one to fight in my arena of death.
Can you identify the creature by rearranging the letters? You call out to the dwarf that you are ready to fight the Minotaur. The wooden door rises slowly, and you see the fearsome beast, half man, half bull, step into the arena. Steam blows from its nostrils as it works itself up into a rage, ready to attack. Suddenly it rushes forward, swinging its double-headed axe. The Minotaur swings its huge axe above its head. You step aside as it smashes into the floor. You're able to land an attack from the side. Your speed is improving. You run directly at the Minotaur and slice at its leg as you run by. The Minotaur leans forward and takes a run at you. Speed is impressive, but you duck and roll aside, landing a heavy blow on its shin. The dwarf calls down from the balcony, congratulating you on your victory. He throws the sack down into the arena and tells you to relax and regain your strength for the final part of the test. Then he walks off, saying he will return in about 10 minutes. You open the sack and find a jug of wine and a cooked chicken. After about 20 minutes, the dwarf reappears on the balcony. He calls down to you, saying,
Well, I do have an interesting problem on my hands. Prepare to fight your next opponent.
The wooden door rises once again, and you are surprised to see a familiar face. It is Throm. He is cut and badly bruised and doesn't seem to recognize you. He is clearly delirious as he staggers forward with his axe raised to attack you. The dwarf laughs and says,
The cobra bit him, but he has the strength of an ox and managed to carry on, even though most men would have died. Now you must fight him to decide finally which of you will continue the trial of champions.
You shout abuse at the dwarf, protesting the cruelty of such a contest. He merely laughs, and you have no option but to defend yourself against poor Throm. Despite his wounds, he is immensely strong. You hurl yourself at Throm, fists flailing, and land a stunning blow on his chin. You drop to the ground, sweeping away Throm's legs. You hate it as he howls as his head hits the hard ground. Throm grabs you by the throat and manages to half choke you before you get a chance to push him off. Exhausted by your long duel, you fall to your knees as you stare at Throm's still body. A bitter loathing for the dwarf fills your heart. Somehow, you will avenge Throm. Engulfed in your hatred, you do not notice the dwarf enter the arena until he is standing right in front of you, a loaded crossbow aimed at your chest.
I know what you are thinking,
he says calmly.
But remember that only I know the way out of here. Get up. It's time for you to leave.
Once on your feet, the dwarf indicates that you should walk ahead of him. Back in the chamber, he crosses over to the northern wall and pushes against one of its stones. A door-like section of the wall swings out, opening into another crystal-lit tunnel. With his crossbow still aimed at your chest, the dwarf smiles, saying,
Good luck.
The tunnel soon divides into two. You hear a buzzing sound coming from the western branch. The tunnel leads into a dark chamber, covered in thick cobwebs. Clawing your way through them, you trip over a wooden casket. The casket opens easily, and inside there is a black velvet bag containing a large pearl, gaining you 1 luck point. After putting the pearl in your pocket, you press on through the cobwebs. You reach the far wall of the chamber and see 2 doors. As you touch the door handle, it goes soft in your hand, and when you try to pull it away, you find your hand is now glued to the handle. A giant fist then forms in the center of the door panel and shoots forward, punching you in the stomach, costing you 1 stamina point. The fist retracts and prepares to strike again. With your free hand, you draw your sword and try to cut the handle off the door. Although you do not recognize it, you are being attacked by the fluid form of an imitator. It's a tight space, but you swing your sword and take a good chunk out of the protruding arm. The hand grabs the blade of your sword, but you are stronger than it expected, and pull the blade free, slicing its fingers. You manage to grab a finger of the flying fist and twist it back until you hear a sickening crunch. Your sword severs the handle completely, and now separated from its parent body, it shrivels away and drops onto the floor. Having no other choice, you somewhat apprehensively turn the handle of the other door. The door opens into another tunnel running north. Ahead you see 2 stone fountains, one on either side of the tunnel, carved in the shape of cherubs. Water spouts from their mouths and cascades into small bowls at their feet. The cool water is refreshing and comes from a source which has been sprinkled with pixie dust, gaining you 1 stamina point and 2 skill points. Leaning against the left-hand wall of the tunnel, you see a pair of bamboo stilts. They are securely chained, and you see a label attached to a padlock which reads, "The price of these stilts is 1 gold piece. Place the coin in the slot to release the lock." There is a slot in the padlock into which you place the coin. Immediately the lock clicks apart, and you are able to unchain the stilts. You place them on your shoulder and once again set off north. A little farther on, you come to a section of the tunnel which is covered with thick green slime. It looks threatening, so you decide to test it first with a piece of cloth. The slime's corrosive jelly burns the cloth instantly, leaving no trace. You climb onto your stilts and take a few tentative steps across the floor. Your confidence grows, and you soon feel able to tackle the walk across the slime. Smoke rises from the base of the stilts as the slime starts to burn them away. You plod stolidly on and finally reach firm ground again. Unfortunately, the stilts are still covered in slime, and you are forced to dump them. Setting off north, you come to a junction. You walk no more than 3 meters west before you hit an invisible barrier. It starts fizzing and crackling, and you are thrown back. You have hit an energy screen, losing you 1 stamina point. There is no alternative but to walk back to the junction and head north. You soon arrive at a double door in the left-hand wall. You listen at the door but hear nothing. You try the handle, it turns, and you open the left door slightly and peer through the crack. An armed warrior is lying face down on the floor of a bare room with smooth walls and a low ceiling. He is presumably dead, for he makes no movement, even when you call out to him. A large jewel, perhaps a diamond, lies just beyond his outstretched arm. You finally reach the warrior's body, but as soon as you touch the jewel, both it and the warrior vanish into thin air. You hear the door slam behind you, followed by a sudden, ominous rumbling above you. You look up and see the ceiling start to lower. You run to the door to try to escape, but it is locked, and there is no handle on the inside. The ceiling gradually drops until you are forced to lie on the ground, trying to halt the ceiling's progress with your hands and feet. But it is a hopeless task, and you are crushed to death in the stone vise. If only you'd found a potion that allowed you to detect traps like this. You soon arrive at a double door in the left-hand wall. You listen at the door but hear nothing. You try the handle, it turns, and you open the left door slightly and peer through the crack. An armed warrior is lying face down on the floor of a bare room with smooth walls and a low ceiling. He is presumably dead, for he makes no movement, even when you call out to him. A large jewel, perhaps a diamond, lies just beyond his outstretched arm. The tunnel continues north for quite a distance before coming to a dead end. The mouth of a chute protrudes from the western wall, and it appears to be the only alternative to turning back. You decide to risk it and climb into the chute. You slide gently down and emerge into a room, landing on your back. As soon as you stand up, you are confronted by the most repulsive sight you have ever laid eyes on. There in front of you, wallowing in a circular pool of fetid slime, is a bulbous creature too horrible to be believed. Its body is green and covered all over with fearsome-looking spikes. Its face is a mass of crimson blisters, one of which suddenly bursts to reveal yet another of its many sinister, all-seeing eyes. A narrow path runs around the edge of the pool and leads into another tunnel in the far wall. Remembering the description of the vile blood beast and the warning about the toxic gas rising from its pool, you cover your mouth with your sleeve and step forward with your sword drawn. wary of the blood beast's tongue. As you step around the side of the pool, it rolls forward and flicks out its tongue. But you are ready for it, and cleave it with one swipe of your sword. The beast howls in pain and stretches forward frantically, trying to clasp you between its blood-filled jaws. You start hacking at its hideous face in an attempt to pierce its real eyes. The creature reaches for you with its mouth from the pool. You step back to avoid it, but slip on its fetid slime. It sinks its teeth into your ankle, costing you precious stamina. The blood beast's tail whips around you. You duck, but not quickly enough, and it punctures your arm deeply.
You quickly eat some provisions, increasing your stamina by 4 points.
Breathing heavily during your fight, you begin to succumb to the toxic gas and fall, cracking your head on the floor. Your blade strikes one of the blood beast's real eyes with devastating effect. It slumps back into its pool, thrashing about in a frenzy. You seize the opportunity and run around the side of the pool to the tunnel exit. The tunnel leads into a large room, its ceiling supported by several marble pillars. As you enter the room, you see a strange beast to your right. It has the body of a lion with dragon-like wings attached to it, but its head is like that of an old bearded man. You recognize the beast. It is a manticore. Taking heed of the warning poem you took from the skeleton warrior, you watch out for its tail, which sprouts a profusion of sharp spikes at its tip, thick and hard as iron bolts. You raise your shield in front of you just in time to protect yourself from a volley of spikes released from the manticore's tail and aim straight at your heart. They sink into your shield, and you remain unharmed. Swiftly, you draw your sword and advance on the manticore. The creature runs directly at you. You move too late, and the creature smashes you onto a wall, costing you valuable stamina. You lunge at the creature's stomach with your sword drawn. It tries to move, but you land a powerful blow.
You quickly eat some provisions, increasing your stamina by 4 points.
The giant creature whips its spiked tail at you, firing more spikes. You duck and roll, quickly slicing a chunk from its tail, passing close to you. As you are wiping the manticore's blood from your sword, you are surprised to see a small man jump out from behind one of the marble pillars. He is dressed in a tight-fitting green tunic and looks quite harmless, although you are wary of the way he is holding an opaque glass ball with a shimmering green light. "Greetings," he says cheerfully. "My name is Igbot, the gnome, and I am the trial master for your final test. Needless to say, my magical powers are great, so you should not try to attack me. You may have learnt, during your quest, that gems play an essential part in the trial of champions. The iron door in front of you is the victory exit, but there is only one way of opening it. 3 gems have to be put into the lock mechanism in the correct order. Each gem radiates a unique energy, which will trigger the mechanism. If you do it correctly, that is. But first, we need the correct gems. First, you will need an emerald. The gnome shakes his head and says, I am afraid that you have failed the trial of champions. Baron Circumvit's Deathtrap Dungeon will keep its secrets for another year, as you will not be allowed to leave here. You are appointed my servant for the rest of your days to prepare and modify the dungeon for future contestants. Perhaps, in another life, you will succeed. There is a large idol in the center of the cavern that must be 6 meters high. In its head are jeweled eyes, each as big as your fist. On either side of the idol stand 2 giant stuffed, bird-like creatures. The idol is very smooth and will be difficult to climb. Some rope would have been ideal for this task, but alas, you don't have any. So slowly and carefully, you begin to climb the idol. You're about to grab hold of its large ear when suddenly your foot slips. We'll need to check how lucky you are. We'll roll 2 dice, and if the number rolled is equal to or less than your current luck score, you have been lucky. But if the number rolled is higher than your current luck score, you have been unlucky. You just managed to grab the idol's earlobe and regain your footing. You scramble over its face and sit down on the bridge of its nose. You draw your sword and consider which jeweled eye to prize out first. As you touch the emerald eye of the idol, you hear a creaking sound below you. Looking down, you are shocked to see the 2 stuffed birds taking flight. Their wings flap in jerky movements, but they are soon above you and look set to attack. You'll fight the flying guardians, 1 at a time, but your skill is reduced by 3 during this combat because of your restricted position. Coming at you with its razor-sharp talons, you're able to swipe your sword, partially removing one of the guardian's toes. You manage to grab one of its legs, flipping it over, making it fall fast, but it recovers just before hitting the ground. Neither of you are harmed. You're able to grab the wing of the guardian and send it crashing into the idol. It recovers, but you took some of its stamina. The crumpled form of the first flying guardian falls crashing to the floor. So you ready yourself to take on the second. The guardian snaps at you with its vicious beak, but you're able to smash the hilt of your sword into its outstretched neck. The guardian snaps at you with its vicious beak. You parry, but the tip of the creature's beak sinks deep into your arm. The beating wing of the guardian smashes into the side of your head, leaving you seeing stars and sapping your stamina. Your final swipe dispatches the second flying guardian. You look down and see the crumpled bodies of the flying guardians lying motionless on the floor. You start to prize out the idol's emerald eye with the tip of your sword. At last it comes free, and you are surprised by its weight. Hoping that it may be of use later, you put it in your backpack. You try to force the point of your sword under the emerald eye. Much to your surprise, it shatters on contact, releasing a jet of poisonous gas straight into your face. The gas knocks you out and you fall backwards, bouncing down the idol to land on the stone floor. Your adventure ends here. There is a large idol in the center of the cavern that must be 6 meters high. In its head are jeweled eyes, each as big as your fist. On either side of the idol stand 2 giant stuffed, bird-like creatures. The idol is very smooth and will be difficult to climb. Some rope would have been ideal for this task, but alas, you don't have any. So slowly and carefully, you begin to climb the idol. You're about to grab hold of its large ear when suddenly your foot slips. We'll need to check how lucky you are. We'll roll 2 dice, and if the number rolled is equal to or less than your current luck score, you have been lucky. But if the number rolled is higher than your current luck score, you have been unlucky. You lose your balance and tumble headlong to the floor, losing 2 stamina points. Taking tentative steps, you slowly start to climb the idol again. But once again, your foot slips on the smooth idol. You reach out again for its ear, and again, we'll see how lucky you are. You just manage to grab the idol's earlobe and regain your footing. You scramble over its face and sit down on the bridge of its nose. You draw your sword and consider which jeweled eye to prize out first. As you touch the emerald eye of the idol, you hear a creaking sound below you. Looking down, you are shocked to see the 2 stuffed birds taking flight. Their wings flap in jerky movements, but they are soon above you and look set to attack. You'll fight the flying guardians, 1 at a time, but your skill is reduced by 3 during this combat because of your restricted position.
Coming at you with its razor-sharp talons, you're able to swipe your sword, partially removing one of the guardian's toes. You're able to grab the wing of the guardian and send it crashing into the idol. It recovers, but you took some of its stamina. The guardian snaps at you with its vicious beak, but you're able to smash the hilt of your sword into its outstretched neck.
The crumpled form of the first flying guardian falls crashing to the floor. So you ready yourself to take on the second.
You lunge for the creature as it flies above you, but your sword clangs into the statue. Neither of you are harmed. You quickly eat some provisions, increasing your stamina by 4 points. Coming at you with its razor-sharp talons, you're able to swipe your sword, partially removing one of the Guardian's toes. Clawing at your leg with its talons, the Guardian rips away a chunk of your stamina.
Your final swipe dispatches the second flying Guardian. You look down and see the crumpled bodies of the flying Guardians lying motionless on the floor. You start to prize out the idol's emerald eye with the tip of your sword. At last it comes free, and you are surprised by its weight. Hoping that it may be of use later, you put it in your backpack. You lower yourself carefully down the idol, and wasting no more time in the cavern, run forward to the tunnel in the northern wall. Not much farther down the tunnel, the tunnel leads into a large room, its ceiling supported by several marble pillars. As you enter the room, you see a strange beast to your right. It has the